In this video, I'm going to cover part G of question number 4, investigation of exercise 18.4. Part 1. Use what you have learned in your investigation to sketch the following graphs. Y is equal to -1 by x squared. When we did this graph in part A, the answers were 1 by 16, 1 by 9, 1 by 4, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1 by 4, 1 by 9, and 1 by 16. Now, since there is a negative sign with this now, so all the values are going to have a negative sign with them now, like this. And the graph would be like this as I'm going to draw it right now. Okay, let me do it for this thing. And now let me label the axes as I do. Okay, this is -1, -2, -3, -4, and same goes on the right side. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, as this is the x-axis. And this is the y-axis, as you know. This axis and scaling is normally being done already in the CIE exam paper answer sheet. Since I'm doing it over here, so I'm just doing it so that you can have an idea of how the graph is going to be drawn. Okay, for y now, since in part A, we drew the graph as it was like this. So for a negative sign, the only change is going to be that it is going to have now below the x-axis. It's all the graph and both of its parts are going to be on the negative side of the y-axis. That means it is going to be made something like this and like this. So if you plot all these points, for example, if there is -1, that corresponds to -1 on the y-axis. So for here, the value of y is -1. For -1 by 2, the value of y is -4. So this is -1 by 2 on the x-axis. So joining it here, so it would be like y is equal to -4. And for even positive value of x to be 1 by 2, the value of y is still negative 4, and for 1, the value of y is still negative 1. So this is how this graph is to be drawn. Okay, now for second part, y is equal to x raised to power negative 2 plus 2. This can be simplified to give us y is equal to 1 divided by x squared plus 2. Since this is a graph of y is equal to 1 by x squared, and for the line y is equal to 2, this is going to be the line for y is equal to 2. So now this is going to serve as the asymptote for the new graph. So let me draw it with green color, and the graph would look like this and this. So this is the graph for y is equal to 1 divided by x squared plus 2, or you can write it down x is to the power negative 2 plus 2, showing that y is equal to 2 is the asymptotic line for this graph. Okay, now for part H, explain in your own words how a graph in the general form y is equal to a x raised to power negative 1 is different from y is equal to a raised to power a x raised to power negative 2. So y is equal to a x raised to power negative 1. This can be written as a divided by x, and the other graph, so its graph is going to be, as we have seen already, its graph is actually like this or like this. The graph is in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant when a is greater than 0, and it's in second and fourth quadrants when the value of a is less than 0. And we have seen above in part A and in part G, part 1, that the graphs for y is equal to a x is to power negative 2, which can be written as a divided by x squared. It would be like this and like this when a is greater than 0, and as we did in this G part 1, this one, y, this was a graph of y is equal to negative 1 by x squared. So the graph has its both parts below the x-axis when the value of a was lesser than 0. So if now we compare them, we see that this is a graph of hyperbola with two curves in the opposite quadrants. This was in quadrant 1 and 3, and this was in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. So in this case, now we see that the value of y is positive a by x squared. That means range are all positive numbers, and in this case y is equal to negative a divided by x squared. So in this case range is negative numbers. So in this case the graph is above x-axis, and in this case the graph is below x-axis. So this is how we compare these two graphs, and this is how both the graphs are different from one another. So I hope it would be clear now. So that's it for exercise 18.4.